Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the Basketball Bulletin. I'm Trevor Lane. Happy to have y'all here. Hope you're digging the new intro there. Some new music, a new graphic. We got the new logo, all that kind of stuff. Donnie's going to start putting on t-shirts and hats and all that. I think it's pretty sick. Yeah, starting alive at 10 p.m. Pacific time. Come on. That's not too late. I don't know about you guys. I'm a night owl. So the way I've always been wired ever since I was a little kid. Always been a night owl. Man, somebody said, Trevor's got to be on Pacific time. No way, man's out here going live at 12 or 1. It doesn't matter where I am. Doesn't matter where I am. I'm always going to be on Pacific time. I cover the Lakers, right? I can be on the East Coast, and I'm still going to go with Pacific time hours. That's how it goes. How long am I going live for? Well, that is the one thing, is that I'm not trying to stay on here for hours and hours or anything like that. I am going to try. I need to be better about this. I'm going to try to prioritize some sleep tonight because I don't know how much of it there's going to be over the next month or so. So I'm not going to be here for a super long time, but there is some stuff that Mark Stein just dropped that I think we need to get into. The Giannis trade, like Detroit now maybe jumping in as the third team. We'll talk about that. Serious buzz that Darren Peterson is actually going to go number 1 overall and what that might mean for Utah. What might that mean for Walker Kessler? What that might mean for the Jazz in general? What could also happen with some of these free agents that right now are negotiating with their teams? We got some intel on a couple of players that may be coming to terms on a new deal real soon here. So lots of stuff that we've got to get into here. Happy to see all you here. AI music sucks. I don't think maybe the music is AI. I don't know. I got it from it's YouTube's music base that I got it from. I don't know how the music was made. The graphic, yes, it was AI because I'm not that good with graphic stuff. Okay. Yeah, if you're in Hawaii, there you go. Nice and early for you. Okay. Let's get into some of the latest things. By the way, tomorrow, I am going to try to get most of my stuff wrapped up before Team USA plays. Team USA against Australia tomorrow. Come on, Christian Pulisic, please be able to play. We'll see. Okay, let's go get into some of the latest stuff here, and I'm going to start with Peterson going number 1 overall over Dabansa. That is starting to be more and more of the buzz. I kind of wonder, does this wind up being the draft like the Jabari Smith, the epic Jabari Smith, Paolo Banchero swerve? The Orlando Magic had everybody thinking they were taking Jabari Smith, and then the last minute, they're like, nope, fooled y'all, Paolo Banchero. Let's go. Could we see that? Could the Wizards surprise everybody and just take Cam Boozer? Maybe. I don't think so, but let's check this out. So this is from Mark Stein. Said with only a few days to go before Tuesday night's first round of the NBA draft, multiple draft experts passed along that they legitimately believe Washington could select Darren Peterson over AJ Debonsa with the number 1 overall pick. Increased consideration is the way they're putting it. I am not a draft expert. I am cramming for the draft. I have learned a lot about players that are around where the Lakers are drafting specifically, but I've dove into a lot of different draft prospects and all that. I still see Debonsa being the guy, but I'll say this for the draft overall. Okay, I don't mind there being drama about who's going to go number 1. I think that's actually a good thing. Is chatter smokescreen? That's one thing we have to remember with everything, not just draft stuff. Everything going on right now is it's lying season. It's lying season right now. But could this be a response to the Jazz putting out there that they were totally torn between Cam Boozer, Darren Peterson, and AJ Debonsa? They have no idea. We're totally torn over who we're going to pick. Is this just the Wizards trying to mess with the Jazz that much more? Or what is happening here? By the way, how quickly would the Jazz just take AJ Debonsa if he does fall to number 2? right? I think there's a real world where it goes Devonta, Boozer, Peterson. I think that could really happen. I think Cam Boozer does make sense in Utah. I think Darren Peterson makes sense too. Although very clearly Darren Peterson doesn't want to be in Utah. That's a lot of the reporting out there is that he wants to go number 1 or he wants to go number 3. Doesn't want to go to Utah. Does not want to go to the Jazz. Doesn't think he's a good fit with Keontae George. Keontae George, Ace Bailey, kind of already in that backcourt. He'd rather go to Memphis, where John Morant's going to be on the way out, than go to Utah. That said, Ace Bailey didn't want to go to Utah either. And Utah last year said, we don't care. We're taking you anyway. So I think Utah probably just go. I don't think that's going to sway Utah. Let me say that. If Utah wants Darren Peterson and Devonta does go number 1 overall, they're going to take their guy. Now, Mark Stein does say neither Cam Boozer or Caleb Wilson are in contention to go number 1 overall. Boozer is widely projected to go to Memphis at number 3. Wilson is expected to go at number 4. That could very well be the way this plays out. I'm really curious to see, though. Is this all just smoke by Washington to try to keep Utah from getting a read on things? I don't know. I love having mystery at the top of the draft, and that appears to be what we're getting right here. All right, the other bit of news, and I'm going to dedicate the second half of however long I'm on here for to just your questions, your comments, all of that. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to get into. But the next thing I want to get into here is the Pistons are in as a third team potentially in a Giannis trade. And I talked about this a little bit a few days ago, why it actually makes a ton of sense. And I had a few Pistons fans in the comment section that disagreed with me, and that's fine. But the Pistons, according to Stein, should be monitored as a potential third-team facilitator in a Giannis Antetokounmpo to Miami trade with Tyler Hero landing in Detroit. Look, I think this makes a ton of sense. Detroit needs another guy who could shoot and create. That's what they need. Now, do you ideally want to pay $30 million for that, which is what Tyler Hero is making? What's he at, 30, 33? Somewhere along those lines? Probably at 33. Probably not. Probably not. Like if you told me the Pistons could find a way to get Kobe White for the mid-level, or they could go pay Tyler Hero $33 million, I'd rather have Kobe White for the mid-level if I could do that. Now, Kobe White, we'd be talking about a multi-year deal. Tyler Hero, 1-year deal. But I think Tyler Hero is the type of player that could fit and meet some needs. I think he's the kind of player that the Pistons should have gone and gotten before the trade deadline and had going into the playoffs. They very clearly in the playoffs needed another creator, and they needed to have somebody else who could shoot the basketball as well. It was way too much on just Cade. That said, what are they going to give up? Well, I mean, I know Pistons fans don't like it, but what about the 21st pick in the draft? I know Pistons fans are saying, no, there's too much talent in the draft. Can't give up 21, not for Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero is really damn good. Like, he's a good player. I don't know if I want to pay him $33 million. And yes, this is the other thing. He's expiring. So is there some sort of he is extension eligible. Could you negotiate a longer term deal? Bottom line, if it's whether it is Tyler Hero or not, I think there could be some sense to the Pistons turning the 21st pick into a creator, off-ball scorer type player. I think that look, there's a reason why Detroit gets mentioned as a potential landing spot. It's very, very unlikely, obviously, but a potential team where Austin Reeves would make sense, right? They need that type of player to come onto this team. So Detroit jumping into this Giannis trade and being the team to ultimately get Tyler Hero, yeah, that does make sense. Now, if Milwaukee's getting the 21st pick, if you're Milwaukee, would you rather have Tyler Hero or the 21st pick? Probably with the state they're going to be in, probably the 21st pick, although it doesn't help them to lose games anymore. So maybe there's a little bit more of a push towards getting players that can help you win right now, and Tyler Hero is certainly that. But personally, if I'm Milwaukee, I'd rather have the pick. And I think there's a case to be made for Detroit rather going for, whether it's a Tyler Hero or someone else, rather going for that. Rather going for the player that they know they can plug in right now. It could take a team that was the 1 seed last year in the Eastern Conference and fill that hole, give them what they need. Now, the challenge for Detroit, you may run into some issues cap-wise. Can you send out some other players? Can you make something else work there? Can there be some other salaries going out in the deal? maybe there's something to be found there, but that again can get a bit tricky. I just think there is some sense behind the general idea of the Detroit Pistons turning the 21st pick into a guy who could step on the floor right now, be a creator, and be a secondary off-ball scorer for this team. That makes some sense. So keep an eye on that. I think that there is a real chance that Milwaukee, if they do wind up going ahead with this Heat trade, I don't fully buy the whole, well, we just might hold him past the NBA draft. We just might wait till after the draft to trade Giannis. I don't fully buy that. I don't fully buy that from Detroit. I think, or from Milwaukee. I think they want to get a deal done. I buy that they don't have everything that they want in the trade package right now, and I don't blame them for trying to use whatever leverage they've got, put in whatever pressure they've got. And what's funny is you've got like Bucks fans right now that are vilifying the hell out of the Heat in this situation and complaining, how dare the Heat not put forth every asset they've got when they're not even that great assets. And you've got Heat fans that are running around vilifying the hell out of the Bucks. How dare they try to make us wait? And they're not being serious, and this is why teams don't want to negotiate with them, because they keep acting like they're going to make a trade and then they back away. They never want to pull the trigger. It's a frustrating process for fans of both those teams for sure. Even me as a neutral person in these teams, I'm like, come on, let's just get this thing done already. If it's Boston, do it with Boston. Fine, get the thing done. But I do think it's going to be a more complex trade than just a 1-for-1. I think Milwaukee, whether it's Kelly Oubre, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, whatever else is coming their way, because there'll be more contracts, I think some other team is going to come in and get some of the players coming from the Heat in exchange for assets going to Milwaukee. I think that makes sense. Now, it could wind up being Portland is the next team in, and they've got Bucks picks. Maybe that's something that makes sense. Maybe it's Detroit as a third team, but I do think when Giannis is traded, and I still think it's going to happen by the draft, I think it's going to wind up being at least a 3-team trade, maybe more, with other pieces going out to try to get Milwaukee the stuff they want. There's one thing clear. Obviously, Milwaukee doesn't have everything they want in the deal right now. Otherwise, they'd already pull the trigger. But can they get there? That's where they may have to get a third team in, particularly in the Miami deal. Boston, it makes sense that they keep trying to walk back like, well, we're not even so sure if we've got Jalen Brunson in the deal or not. I don't know. We're not that interested in trading. I'm sorry, Jaylen Brown. Got the Knicks on the brain after that championship parade. Jaylen Brown, in the trade, they've got to be able to walk things back with him in the event that a trade doesn't go through. By the way, if I'm Boston, if I can do anything close to Jaylen Brown plus like a first for Giannis, I'm just doing it. I would just do. I know you're already starting from a strong place with Brown and Tatum, but if I could turn Jaylen Brown into Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I think checks a lot of boxes for Boston, I would just do that. I know there's chemistry and all of that kind of stuff to think of, and you'd have to get a third team to probably take Jaylen Brown, and that team would have to send valuable stuff to Milwaukee, and it's a complex deal. But if the net for Boston is like Jaylen Brown and a first, and you're going to get Giannis, man, I would just do that. I would do that. I would get that done. All right. Let's get to, and appreciate the super chats, everybody. We're going to get to those in just a moment. Had one more topic I wanted to get into, and that is that we're already seeing some free agents start to potentially come off the board here. Remember, teams are allowed right now to negotiate with their own free agents. In case you didn't notice, Walker Kessler did post something to, speaking of free agents, did post to Instagram talking about, I want to clear it that I always wanted to be here. I love this city, these fans, my teammates, my coaches. That's real to me. You don't grow roots where you don't want to be. Great to hear. Jazz have still got to pay what it is that he wants. We'll see what winds up happening. But right now, Walker Kessler trying to, smooth things over a little bit with Jazz fans. But check this out. Teams can negotiate with their own players right now, can verbally come to agreements right now. Kristaps Porzingis. League sources say sides are indeed progressing in talks on a new deal after the Warriors acquired Porzingis and his expiring salary at $31 million. Now, what is that deal going to look like, especially given the health issues Porzingis has been having? I would imagine there's going to be Well, it's going to be less than 31 million. I can tell you that for sure. I would imagine there's going to be some team protection in there. If it's a multi-year deal, maybe it's a team option, maybe it's non-guaranteed money on latter years after the first year. And again, a significant drop off of 31 million. But I do think if Porzingis gets healthy, and it's a big if, hopefully he does, but if Porzingis gets healthy, he can be a real good fit in Golden State, especially if they can get him to take much less, obviously, than that $31 million. And then sources likewise describe Minnesota as very motivated to re-sign Ayo Dosunmu, even though doing so will almost certainly force Minnesota to shed salary elsewhere. So I know a lot of fans of a lot of teams have had Ayo Dosunmu high on their boards of guys to target in free agency. I have as well. I like Ayo Dosunmu a lot, but you knew that with Donte DiVincenzo injured for maybe the entire season of next year due to that unfortunate Achilles injury, that bringing back Ayo was not just a want, it's a need, right? It's a must for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So they're not going to mess around on that contract. So Ayo Dosunmu, very, very likely to sign a new deal in Minnesota. And I think Minnesota is going to pay him. We're talking above mid-level money because I think there's a bunch of teams that would be happy to give him mid-level money. So I would imagine Minnesota is going to give him well above mid-level money, multi-year deal. The number that's in my head is it like a 3-year, $70 million deal? Something like that. That would be, I think, the ceiling for Ayo. Otherwise, 3-year, 55, somewhere around that range. Maybe we could see. Again, I'm looking at somewhere between that like 70 and 55 range for 3 years. That's what I'm thinking we could see. If it's a 4-year deal, tack another, call it $20 million onto either one of those figures. But that's my guess as to where the Ayo deal actually comes in at. Again, I like Ayo Dosunmu a lot. Minnesota probably keeps him. But they have to shed salary. I would be keeping a real close eye on Donte DiVincenzo. I really think they trade, whether it's by himself or in a package, I think they offload Donte DiVincenzo. And it's not that they want to move on from Donte. It's just he's injured. And while he's going to try, what are the odds that he does come back next year? Is he really going to be ready to go? Jason Tatum did it, but just because Tatum did it doesn't mean Donte DiVincenzo's body is going to heal the exact same way. I wouldn't be shocked if Donte DiVincenzo is attached to Julius Randle in a trade, or Donte DiVincenzo attached to Rudy Gobert in a trade, and then we see a bigger deal. In fact, what about DiVincenzo and Julius Randle to Memphis for Ja Morant? I mean, I'm just spitballing, but Randle and Donte, that's $47 million in salary. You go check out Memphis. Ja Morant sitting at 42, so you save a little bit of salary there. That's $5 million that you wipe off. That helps. And if you're Minnesota, now you've got Ja, Anthony Edwards, and Ayo Dosunmu in your backcourt. I mean, I'm not very high on Ja right now, but Minnesota needs to do something, and maybe you're killing two birds with one stone there by clearing a little bit of salary and adding a backcourt player while getting rid of that logjam that you've got with Randle, Gobert, and Naz Reid, which I think very clearly needs to be upended. And on top of that, I think Julius Randle, stylistically, there's a familiarity with the style of player Julius Randle is and the Memphis market. I mean, the second coming of Zach Randolph, right? Like that's what we're talking about. Like that could be a thing. And you go Zach Edey, Julius Randle, Cedric Howard, whoever they grab at number 3. Maybe it is Carlos Boozer. If not, it's one of Boozer, Peterson, DeBonsa. I don't think DeBonsa falls that far. Probably either Peterson or Boozer. But you're adding one of those guys. Cedric Howard's really good. I'm really high on him. Not necessarily as a star, but as just a solid and a stylistic fit with that team, with that city. It makes a bit of sense to me. And you'd be clearing money for next year off of your books because Donte DiVincenzo's money would expire. And Julius Randle makes, $11 million less than Ja Morant would next year. I don't think you're getting significant assets for Ja Morant. So do you at least take some cap savings there and do something along those lines? To me, that makes some sense. That makes some sense. Memphis would probably do it, but I don't think that gets them out of the bottom three. I think a lot of Memphis in the bottom three comes down to, does Zach Edey play? Does Zach Edey play or not? Because Zach Edey, when he played, he was awesome. He was so good. He was so good. And unfortunately, man, the big fella, just injury after injury after injury, played in 11 games. In the 11, he averaged a double-double. 14 points, 11 boards, 2 blocks for Zach Edey. 63% from the field. He was good, 26 minutes, and he only played 11 games. Is he healthy? Is he not? I think that's going to be a big question for Memphis. I know they're going to play hard. Ty Jerome spent most of the season injured too. He's a guy that could step in and give them something. I think there's some pieces in Memphis that are, I don't think they're going to be good. Santi Aldama is a guy I like as well. I don't think Memphis is going to be good. They found some stuff in Cam Spencer, Gigi Jackson, Jalen Wells I like too on the wing. I think they can be better than bottom three as long as health allows them to be. You've got wings. Cedric Howard, Jalen Wells, Zach Edey. You add Julius Randle in that mix. Cam Boozer at the guard spot. You got Cam Spencer, who's better than I think people give him credit for. Scottie Pippen Jr., can he get healthy? Not fully guaranteed on his contract anyway. You picked up Walter Clayton. Ty Jerome barely got to play last year. They spent on him. That'd be interesting. Again, they might be one of the bottom teams, but if they're healthy, they could play their way out of it. Cam Boozer at the guard spot. No, I wouldn't put Cam Boozer at the guard spot. I wouldn't do that. And by the way, I don't think Ja would be the number one option for Minnesota. I think other guys would have to not pan out for Minnesota. By the way, everybody, I should have mentioned this off the top, but I'd been talking with Donnie the other day about it, talking about, maybe in the evenings, rather than just recording a show, maybe a few times at least, I want to consistently try to do some more lives in the evenings during this time of year, because we have so much going on with the trade deadline, or I'm sorry, not trade deadline, with the draft, with the trade market, with free agency, all that kind of stuff. Just jumping on here, going through some of the things that have been going on over the course of the day. Okay, everybody, I'm actually kind of excited about that Memphis team. That sounds kind of fun to me. I'm not saying they'd be great, but that team sounds kind of fun to me. All right. Let's get into some of your questions and comments here for the second half of the show. Got a lot I want to talk about there. I have a feeling there's going to be a few Lakers questions after the reports that came out today. I have some thoughts. That we need to get into. We'll get to that in 1 minute. We'll be right back. Just need to pay a bill. Don't go anywhere. 1 minute. Going to pause for a moment to give a shout out to our sponsor, that is Prize Picks. Got a great deal right now. Play $5, get $50 instantly when you use the code HMA. The link is in the description down below. Super easy to play Prize Picks. All you got to do is pick more or less on some of your favorite players. And they've got all kinds of sports on there, not just basketball. You also have the NFL, MLB, NHL, and so on. Let's take a look at the NFL, the upcoming season here. I'm going to roll with Puka Nacua. I'm going to say more than 1,249 and a half receiving yards. He had over 1,700 last season, so I feel pretty good about that one. And then Ashton Jeanty, he had 975 rushing yards as a rookie last year. Right now coming in at 974 and a half rushing yards. I think he is going to get more than that and improve upon his rookie year numbers. If you guys want to get in on it, again, that code is HMA. The link is in the description down below. Play $5, get $50 instantly. And if you're going to play, please do so responsibly. All right, let me get into some of your questions, your comments. No, Trevor, you already work 24/7. I mean, in place of my typical recording schedule, if you guys haven't noticed on Bulletin, Donnie and I tend to link up late morning-ish, depending on where you're at, I guess, and record something that is out for most of the afternoon. And then usually eat later on in the evening, middle of the evening, I'll jump on and record something that will go out, somewhat late, and then it'll run all the way through the morning, and then our next show will pick up, and around we go. That tends to be our typical cadence. So I'm talking about, rather than recording a standalone video, jumping on live and making that recording more interactive and taking questions, comments. that sort of thing. As far as my time, it actually doesn't change that much, because if I record something, then afterwards I have to download what I recorded. I have to throw on whatever I need to, fix whatever I need to, upload it, create stuff for it. That process takes a little bit of time. So whereas if I'm live, it just lives on YouTube and I don't have to do a whole lot with it after the fact. So my time, an hour live, is probably sometimes even shorter than if I recorded a 20-minute standalone video. So I'm not talking about adding to it. I know, I get it. I do too much. But all right, let's get into this. Let's get into your questions and comments here. Jose said, went to see a parade today. Oh, awesome. I hope it was fun. Woke up at 4 a.m. Turned out, got shut down by 7:30. Fans camp out at 1:30 a.m. Oh, man. Oh, no. Here I was thinking you had this great experience. Multiple fights, stuck in a subway station, people passing out, chaotic event in New York. Well, I'm sorry. That sucks. Sorry, that's the way that turned out. I saw reports of people who like flew in and couldn't get in, like they flew to get there and were really upset. Obviously, space was a bit limited there. There are a lot of reports of that, but you knew things would get crazy in New York. But I'm sorry that you had to spend your day not seeing the Knicks parade. That's definitely a bummer and unfortunate. All right, let's go here. AC Static said, I think the Lakers should target Sadiq Bey. He would be easier trade than Herb. Herb seems like another Vando. Gets way more expensive. He's a better off-ball defender than Vando is. Vando, so I think one of the things to remember about Jared Vanderbilt, he's very, very good as a defensive player. He can create a lot of havoc there, but he's also a fairly undisciplined defensive player. And so I talk a lot about when things are loud. So, for example, during the dark times, I would talk about Russell Westbrook. Those were not fun years. I'll talk about Russell Westbrook, talk about Russ. And when Russ makes mistakes, he makes loud mistakes. And so when those mistakes occur, you're going to get a outsized reaction to that mistake. I think the same dynamic applies to Austin Reeves' defense. When he is bad defensively, it's in a very noticeable way. He gets beat off the dribble, gets taken to the rim, gets scored on, right? Or he winds up being the low man, gets scored on there. It's a very loud, impossible not to notice way. There are other players who, when they are bad at something, it is more difficult to notice. When Rui Hachimura blows an off-ball assignment, that you may not notice that as much because our brains are trained to follow the ball. That's off-ball. That is easier to not see unless it leads to a bucket and not get upset about, right? Whereas if somebody gets broken down off the dribble, you're going to see it every time. If a guy clanks the ball off the side of the backboard or smokes a layup, you're going to be upset about that every single time. It's a loud mistake. Jared Vanderbilt is a loud defender in that the things that he does well are very noticeable. And I think it creates an overinflated view of what he is as a defensive player. Because when Jared Vanderbilt is good defensively, he's on ball. He is very high movement rate, right? So you're seeing him flying all over the court, extra hustle, and he jumps off the screen. Now, that's all a positive. I'm not trying to knock him for that. Of course, that's a good thing that he's able to do those things on ball. But I think what it does is it overinflates his view or our view of what he is as a defensive player, because we don't notice as much the mistakes that he's making off ball or the times where his overaggression on the defensive side gets him out of position on that end of the floor. To wit, I mean, Jared Vanderbilt on the season, the Lakers were actually worse, not by a lot, by plus 0.3, but they were worse defensively with Jared Vanderbilt on the floor than off. So they're giving up 0.3 points per 100 more with him on the floor. And for a guy who you are obviously going to be worse offensively with him on the floor, you would have expected there to be a better positive impact on the defensive side. That said, I also think that he's a better player than what he is on this Lakers team right now, because I don't think he really fits in JJ Redick's system. I don't think JJ really prefers to play him. So all of that, though, is to say, as far as her being another Vando, Herb Jones may not do things as loud as Vando does defensively, but he is a more of a solid, consistent, better positional defensive player than Vando is. I have these shooting concerns with Herb Jones. I would like to add in, though, when we look at a guy's shooting, what happens to that shooting number when it's Luka on the floor, when it's LeBron on the floor, when it's Austin Reeves on the floor that are collapsing the paint and then kicking out, right? I mean, Herb Jones, what was his quality of looks over the course of the season? I think that's going to be for a New Orleans team, and I have not dug into his stats to see exactly what his shot quality was in terms of spot ups, but I would assume that his shot quality would go up if he became a Laker as opposed to a New Orleans Pelican. So, like Rui Hachimura, very good shooter. There's no denying that. Excellent shooter. How much of his shooting is impacted by the fact that he's getting wide open looks constantly because he's playing with LeBron, Luka, Austin Reeves? Like, what is Rui shooting from three if he's a New Orleans Pelican instead of a Laker? I would imagine it's still good. Is it better than 40%? Maybe not. But it's still really good. He's a good shooter. There's no denying that. But the point is, Herb Jones, I think the hope has to be, if you go trade for Herb Jones, the hope has to be that, well, as a Laker, of his 4 3-point attempts per game, 3 of them are going to be wide open. He's just going to be camped out there. But that's my optimistic spin on it, because honestly, I'm worried too. I'm worried with Herb Jones that this season that I'm looking at right now is not the norm. It is the outlier. A couple seasons ago, we were talking about Herb Jones. We were saying he just went up to a 42% three-point shooter. This season, 2 seasons ago, he was at 31%, but it was in just 20 games. So I was buying into what we saw over 76 games. Well, guess what? We just saw 56 games of him being, again, a 31% three-point shooter. I'm getting worried that this 23-24 season where he shot 42% from three is the outlier. And if that's the case, that's a big knock on his value. We know what a guy who's 3 and D, their value is compared to a guy who's just defense. Doesn't have the 3. That's a concern. Anyway, all of that's my roundabout way to get to your question, which is, what about Saddiq Bey? I like Saddiq Bey just fine as a depth piece, not a starter. And I do think the Lakers specifically need to be focused on finding starting talent. I think this offseason, knowing the restrictions they've got, they need to walk out of this summer with one, at least minimum, this is my bare minimum, one starting caliber player and one top 8 rotation player. That's what I'm looking at. That's what you need to get, at least. That needs to be the bare minimum. And even that is not going to be super easy, but I think you need to have one starting caliber player. It doesn't mean they actually have to start, but the starting caliber player and one top 8 rotation player. Maybe top 9 if we want to really stretch a little bit. And Saddiq Bey could check that second box. I think he could be that, especially at the small forward spot, $6.5 million. Now, the question is, would you want to extend him? He is extension eligible. Could you do something like that with him? But then the other thing is New Orleans going to be realistic about their asking prices? Because just because the asking price has been super, super high, like prohibitively high on Trey Murphy and Herb Jones, that doesn't mean that it isn't also on Saddiq Bey. Like, we're assuming that he costs less. Yeah, but how much less? If Herb Jones or Trey Murphy is, we want a lottery pick plus a bunch of other stuff, plus a really good young blue chip talent for Trey Murphy, then Herb Jones is, we want a first, maybe 2 firsts. Is Saddiq Bey, we want a really good first? I don't know. And I guess if you're the Lakers, would you trade? Because if I'm the Pelicans, I would probably say, okay, we want 25. Give us the 25th pick in the draft. Do you do that for the Lakers? We're going to talk about more on Lakers Collective tomorrow, what they should do with that 25th pick. But there's some interesting things I think to consider there. Pelicans just seem fishy. Well, they do like dining on fish. Pelicans do, you know. I don't get how good all these how all these good players that everybody wants. Hopefully, it's because of the NASA guy. Yeah, I mean, I think the Pelicans have an overinflated view of what they are as a team. But that's me personally. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're right. Why is nobody talking about the idea of the Lakers getting Bilal Coulibaly? Because how available is he? How available is he? If I'm Washington, he's one of my young guys I'm keeping. And Pelicans love fish. Exactly. By the way, has anybody ever seen a pelican? Ever seen a pelican actually gliding above the water? I've gone down to the Gulf. Gone down to New Orleans, checked it out. I mean, you ever go see a pelican actually glide? Like, these are badass birds. Like, you look at this thing going, oh my God. That thing is a tank flying above the water. It's like their mascot's goofy and all that, but man, pelicans are pretty crazy. All right. Isn't Peterson trying to pull an Ace Bailey move like last year during the draft when Ace didn't want to be drafted by Utah, but did? I think AJ Debonsa goes first on fit for the Wizards. Yeah, it seems to be what Darren Peterson wants. And I think it's because players, as time has gone on, players have leaned more and more into the idea that landing spot matters more than draft spot. And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. You know, I mean, we cite Austin Reeves. He could have been drafted by the Detroit Pistons. He said, no, please don't draft me, so that he could go undrafted and then go to the Lakers, because he reasoned that if he was able to get minutes, that he would have a better chance of getting a big payday down the road if he was a Laker than if he was a Detroit Piston. He would get noticed around the league if he was a Laker more so than a Piston. Obviously, he's proven correct. But players want to get to the right spot that's going to give them minutes, that's going to allow them to develop. Literally, I mean, for some of these guys, literally hundreds of millions of dollars could rest upon whether they get drafted by Team A or Team B, where they ultimately wind up. So it makes sense that these guys are, even if it means sliding further in the draft, trying to get to the team they want to be at. And while I can make an argument for Peterson to actually fit just fine in Utah, particularly with that front court that they're already going to have, assuming they keep Walker Kessler, Jaren Jackson, you've got Lauri Markkanen, like that. There's some legitimate size there. They're going to be a good team. Keontae George, Ace Bailey. I get on the outside looking in, you're thinking, well, starting job's not available. Keontae George, Ace Bailey, they're probably starting there. How much opportunity is really there? So I understand that. But I don't think Utah's the worst fit for Darren Peterson. That said, if I were him, Washington, you know, maybe that makes some sense, being number one overall. And then is that an easier step into a starting job? Probably. And certainly in Memphis, right? Assuming John Morant is gone, which I think that's the general belief around the league, is that John Morant's going to be gone. Okay, you're competing with Cam Spencer and Scottie Pippen Jr. Nothing against those guys. I like those guys just fine. But if you can't beat Cam Spencer and Scottie Pippen Jr., there's no way in hell you should be a top 3 pick. So Darren Peterson looking at Memphis saying, yeah, get me there. I walk into a starting job. Let's go. That makes some sense. That said, I don't expect it to work at all. I think Utah does not care. They don't care if the player wants to be there or not. They will draft whoever they think is the best player. So I don't think it matters what Darren Peterson wants at the end of the day. I don't think it matters. Anything is if the Utah Jazz think it's Cam Boozer is the guy they should take because AJ Debonsa goes number 1, they'll do that. They'll take Cam Boozer. If they think it's Darren Peterson, they'll take Darren Peterson. And I do think if Darren Peterson does go number 1, AJ Debonsa, that's the easy pick. Carlos Boozer does work for the Jazz, but there's no way the Jazz are turning down AJ Debonsa. And Cam Boozer would wind up going 3, which I'm sure Memphis is more than fine with doing that. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think it works. Utah has already proven that they just did it last year. They're not going to fall for it. Do you see any true superstars coming out of this draft? AJ Debonsa definitely has the ability to be, the potential. Potential can be a dangerous word, but Peterson, perhaps. Boozer could be. There's some talent here, right? I really like Darius Acuff. I like him a lot. I just don't like his defense. But that guy can score the basketball in a big, big way. I hope the defense doesn't wind up holding him back. Not that he's a similar player at all, but almost in like a Trae Young kind of way. I hope that doesn't wind up being something that limits his ceiling. But that kid's very, very talented. Like him a lot. There is some real talent in this draft. I do think there is a drop-off when you get to actually right around where the Lakers pick. I think that's where the drop-off is. But even where the Lakers are at, I mean, I know I went out and I said the other day, like, hey, the Lakers should trade their pick. And I still believe that's true within the context of getting the kind of player that you're looking for. I'm talking about either a starter or a high-level rotation guy. If you can't get that, if you can't get one of those things, I know the draft has not been kind to them, but I mean, Zuby Ejiofor, like that immediate ultra switchy defensive player that you could throw in there. Henry Vesar's got, if you buy the shooting, that's interesting. My God, though, Jaden Quaintance. I know they just not long ago said no thank you to Mark Williams because he had injury issues, and Jaden Quaintance played 4 games this last year because of the knee. But that I see that guy play defense and I go, oh, that's Rob Williams. I mean, down to the injury history too, right? But you watch him play defense and you just go, Rob Williams. I mean, just next level athlete, rebounder, shot blocker, a big who can slide on the perimeter, that can do everything. The offensive game, you got some questions there, but a lob threat, all of it like that. That dude could legit make, if he gets healthy, I'd be a bit, again, the health is the issue, but I'd be surprised if he finished his career not making all defense at some point. Like that guy's got legit defensive chops and the size, the wingspan and everything to take advantage of it. Dalen Swain, you don't find many wings at that spot of the draft that can attack off the dribble the way that he can. The way that he can attack off the dribble is bonkers. He's got so much wiggle to his game, his ability to cross over, get into the paint, and getting paint touches is really important. I hesitate to go after another guy who can't shoot. That's the knock on him, and his shot form, it's a little bit too compact and it's a bit awkward. By the way, again, I'm not a draft expert, but this is just from looking at these guys and getting a sense of what they are. He's an interesting one too. Terrace Reed, a bit of a throwback, legit, like back to the basket, big. There's a little bit of an Andrew Bynum feel to me when I watch Terrace Reed. They're not the exact same player, but just in terms of kind of a throwback to a different era style big man. But as far as a guy that could set a mean screen, roll hard to the basket, catch, finish, do those sorts of things, protect the paint, rebound, a little bit older because he spent 4 years in school, but like that would be kind of it's the opposite end of the Jaden Quaintance type of thing. Just he doesn't have the mobility, but just big, physical, strong guy that you could put into the paint. There's a lot of interesting guys that could very well, again, not everybody I just mentioned will actually wind up being there at 25, but there's a lot of interesting guys at 25. That's interesting. Did you hear the report saying the Nuggets are interested in Swain and the Lakers looking to move entirely out of the draft, moving 25? Do you think they move out? I think you move out again if you're getting a starter or a top 8, 9 rotation player for your club that fits. The most important thing with the 25th pick for the Lakers, it's that it turns into a rotation player. And the most surefire way to do that is to trade that pick for someone who already is a rotation player in the NBA. The downside is you're giving up the years on the rookie contract, where a rookie contract player, if that guy hits, you've got team control, cost controlled. I mean, a pick at that range is going to cost you $3 million. That's obviously significantly less than whatever. If we're talking about a legit starter or rotation player, that guy's going to cost you way more. But you've missed on your last 2 first-round picks. Just complete miss. You didn't get You didn't get anything close to a rotation player. One guy's out of the league already. You have to get a rotation player minimum with this pick. You cannot miss. And again, the safest way to do that is to turn the pick into someone who already is a rotation player. And not that that's not without risk. I mean, there's always inherent risk with injuries and things of that nature. But yeah, that's why you would consider moving out, especially if you've got teams that really want that pick. You know, I say the report the Nuggets want Swain. It makes some sense. You know, he's a good player. He's an interesting player, but I think if I was going to say anybody in that range of the draft, and by the way, Denver is picking at 26 right after the Lakers. If I was going to look at anybody in that range of the draft that has the potential to be a star, or at least an all-star level player, Swain might be my pick there. Unless you told me Quaintance was going to be healthy. But Swain has a very high ceiling because if the shot comes around, suddenly you've got a fairly good defensively. He's got work to do, but okay defensively wing that can get into the paint. That's great breaking his man down off the dribble. As a secondary creator can be okay in that role. If the shot comes around, you've got a dude that would be going way earlier than that, way earlier than where you're getting him at. So I think he makes some sense to have some. Honestly, though, I don't know that he falls that far. But again, if I'm the Lakers, if I can get a locked-in rotation player, that's where I would move out of the draft. Otherwise, I'd probably keep the pick. And then the more I look at it, the more I lean towards a big for the Lakers. But to be honest, for years now, the Lakers haven't picked the guy that I thought they would take. So, you know, although they did take Dalton Knecht, and when Dalton Knecht was falling, I thought, okay, they're not going to do what they did the year before when they passed on Cam Whitmore, who fell. They're going to take the guy who fell. And sure enough, they did. Obviously, it didn't work out, though. Terrace Reed shares an agent with Jake LaRavia and Austin Reeves. That's something to consider as well. Like, are you trying to smooth things over with that camp a little bit? Yeah, CNAC is interesting too. And I believe, I could be wrong. Teams haven't been as forthright as they were years ago about who's working out for them, but I believe he was coming in for a workout. Pretty sure Terrace Reed did as well. But CNAC is interesting for sure. That's another guy that could wind up being good. Who do I see falling to Brooklyn at 6? I mean, it could be Acuff. There's some reports saying the Clippers take him. I think we're in a spot where at 6, the Nets, and by the way, on this mock that I'm on, this is just the Tankathon mock, they've got Acuff falling to 6 right there. But Wagler's interesting. Fleming's. I mean, there's been a lot of buzz on Michael Brown too. He could wind up going. But I think there could be a situation where Brooklyn, if you're Brooklyn, could you trade back a few spots? Because there's a lot of smoke about the Kings and Acuff wanting to go there. If you want Acuff, could you, if you are a team that's really interested in him, even if the Hawks say they wanted Acuff or something, could you get up to that 6th pick? Could the Nets actually trade back there if they're looking at Flemings, Acuff, Brown, and they're like, yeah, okay, Keaton, Wagler, they're looking at these guys and thinking, we're okay with any of those guys. Can you hop back, pick up something, and then a team jumps in front of Sacramento? Because I don't think Acuff gets past Sacramento. If he's on the board at 7, based on what's been out there, it seems like Sacramento takes him. What happens when a commissioner takes away a team's pick? One less player gets drafted. So, for example, there were, what was it? Was it last year? A few years ago, there were 58 picks in the second round because a couple of picks had been forfeited due to punishments. I don't recall off the top of my head what the punishments were, but yeah. Chance Yaxel falls to 20. I don't think so. I think he goes earlier than that. I mean, here this mock has him at 12. Like, I don't think does OKC may take him here. I don't think OKC passes on him twice. I think the floor probably winds up being 17. Now there have been a little bit of has been a little bit of buzz about him falling because of his workouts. But even then, I mean, going all the way down to 25, somebody falls every year. But I'd be surprised if he ends up being the guy that falls. Yeah, you're right. It was when Bronny was picked at 55. Yeah, there were only 58 players taken in that draft. This, like, Jaden Quaintance should be our starting center next season. I'm assuming you're talking about the Lakers, but regardless of who you're talking about, I don't like rushing rookies into starting jobs, especially a guy who spent so much time injured. I don't want to immediately start a guy like that. I want a guy to get his legs under him, work for. I mean, look, the Spurs got a lot of flack for Dylan Harper not getting more minutes, but in the long run, this may wind up being the best thing for him. Kobe was not a starter his first year in the NBA. He was playing behind Eddie Jones. You know, that's I don't like pushing a rookie into a starting role immediately, especially on a team that expects to win. They need time to learn. They need time to adjust to the pace of the NBA. That's a big thing. That's a big jump to go from the college game, to go from summer league, to suddenly play in an NBA game. That's a real steep learning curve. So unless it's a top pick and you're a team that is willing to let them work through some of their issues because everything else they do is well worth it. For the guy that's being taken at 25, I don't think that's a player that should be penciled into a starting lineup. Is trade season open? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. If Ayton opts in, do you see a trade like DA, Vando, Jake, and a first for Gobert? Wolves lower salary. LA gets a 5 who can lob and block. I'm not specifically for Gobert. I mean, it could happen, but I think the Lakers will explore stuff along those lines. Yes. So in a world where the Lakers do operate as an above the cap team, let's say, and that would mean you're bringing everybody back, basically. You're going to use the bird rights on Rui, on LeBron, on Reeves, on everybody. Luke Kennard, Marcus Smart, right? All these guys. You're going to bring them all back. Well, are you really going to run back the roster from next year? No, especially based on the report that came out today where Luka is like saying, hey, you've been telling us for a year and a half, summer of 26, you're doing big stuff. So, yeah, it's summer of 26. What big stuff are you bringing here, right? So if you do operate as an above the cap team, you're going to need to make your moves on the trade market. And that may not be the worst outcome in the world, simply because most of the best players in free agency are already Lakers. Now, you could also look at it as, what if you were going to get, using your free agent dollars, if you were going to part with, say Rui's not a perfect fit. Okay, let's move on from him. Okay, can we waive and stretch Vando? Can we open up as much salary money as we can, as much spending power as we can? And you're going to go get, I would assume it seems like he's staying with the Wolves, but you're going to go get Quentin Grimes. You're going to go target Mitch Robinson. If the Knicks aren't willing to go into the second apron, you're going to target Mitch Robinson. Maybe you target a Rob Williams. Maybe you're going after a Matisse Thybulle. Maybe you're going after, right, all these different names. Can you try to pry away a restricted free agent? Maybe it's Tari Eason. As much as we talked about Peyton Watson, maybe it's Tari Eason. Guys who are going to really fit with Luka. Like, there is a world where that's the best route too. And that's what I think was so interesting about the Lakers and the spot they're in. But if they do operate as an above the cap team, I think one of the things that would make sense to do is package some kind of draft capital for an upgrade and trade out guys that are at the end of your roster that aren't going to play a lot anyway. Now, DeAndre Ayton is not fit that bill, obviously, but as an $8.1 million expiring, he could become very expendable in that type of situation if he does pick up his option. We won't know until June 29th whether or not, we have to know by June 29th. We could find out tomorrow. He can make the decision whenever he wants, but June 29th is the deadline to make the decision. So I would think that type of situation, Jared Vanderbilt, Jake LaRavia, Jake LaRavia, Dalton Connect. These are guys the Lakers could package together, plus draft capital, have those guys as something of a salary offset to go get a player that costs more than those guys, use up some of your cap space to get those guys, and then go from there to get that guy and then work from there. Now, the other thing that I want to throw out is that if they do operate as an above the cap team, they will have access to the full mid level, assuming they structure their contracts properly. And, LeBron takes a pay cut and Austin doesn't get too much and all of that. So if they operate as an above the cap team, that taxpayer or non-taxpayer mid level, that $15.1 million that they would then have access to, can also act as a trade exception. Now, you can't combine it with players in the way that I'm describing. So let's say in this scenario, let's say they're a below the cap team, Ayton, Vando, that's $20 million in salary. Jake is making it $26 million in salary. And then you're going to go get Rudy Gobert, who's at, what's he at, 37? Let's see, 30. Oh, I was pretty close, 36 and a half. Okay. So you're taking on an extra $10 million. That $15.1 million, if you operate as an above the cap team, can't be combined with players. It's treated like a trade exception. So you could absorb a salary of a player who's making $15 million or less, but you wouldn't be able to take that money, combine it with players, and go absorb a contract that is, say, 33, 36 million, whatever. So that's an important distinction too. Whereas if you operate as a below the cap team, you can use Vando, you can use Connect, Laravia, whoever, right? You want to put in Ayton if he opts in. You could use these guys as a way to offset some of the salary coming in if the team getting those guys is willing to do so. So I hope that made sense. But Rudy Gobert, $36.5 million. Obviously, the age, he wouldn't be the top target for me. I'd be looking elsewhere. But you could also do worse, especially if it was really you're trading away like your end of the bench guy. If it is something like that, if it's Ayton and Vando, and that's being used to offset some of the salary of Gobert, and then you're dipping into your cap space a little bit. The only challenge is you're really not getting the long-term fit next to Luka there with Gobert. So he wouldn't be the top of my list. That's more you miss on a bunch of the other targets, and then maybe you turn to something like that. But I think the concept is one that they'll really explore. I think it makes sense. Based on the reports, if Luka told the front office he wants an A-list center this summer, but if Duren and Kessler return to their teams, who is that A-list center? Gafford? I mean, I guess that's the question, right? What qualifies as an A-list center? Like, really? Who is that? Because you may have to stretch the definition of A-list center a little bit, maybe a lot. Like you mentioned, Daniel Gafford. Is Daniel Gafford an A-list center? No. Stylistically, he fits with Luka, but I don't even know for sure if Daniel Gafford's a starting center. I wouldn't say he's an A-list center. So let's look. Who are we talking about then? Duren. There's something I saw earlier tonight, and I don't want to assume that it's true because the rumor mill is what the rumor mill is, but something about something from the Pistons side about Luka contacting Duren, something. I don't know. We'll see. Again, I don't want to suggest that because I don't even recall exactly where I saw it, but I could have sworn I saw something that was rumbling around that. But there's tons of rumors this time of year. And Jalen Duren will be a restricted free agent. So that's a perilous situation. Boston, Keita, they probably just keep him there. The Knicks, Mitch Robinson, is he an A-list center? He could be more backup than starter. I don't know. It's certainly not. I don't think it's going to be Cat unless James Dolan, when he's talking about not being willing to play the second apron. Are you really? But man, if New York was a mess today during the parade, I can only imagine if New York, after winning the championship, unloads everybody. The Cavs, Jared Allen. Okay. Maybe something there. I don't think they want to move him, but all right. Jakob Poeltl, no thank you. No interest there. Onyeka Okongwu, he was reportedly on the list initially when Luka first became a Laker. He was one of the guys that was on the list that he said, hey, I want a big to play with. Okay, if the Hawks land somebody else, maybe. Philly, Joel Embiid, no thank you. Wendell Carter Jr. for the Magic? No. He's not going to be A-list. I wouldn't mind him, but again, is he a starter? Is he a backup on a good team? We'll see. Moussa Diabate? I love Moose. Moussa Diabate is fun. I don't know that he's a starter, though. Bam Adebayo, obviously, he's not going anywhere. Milwaukee, is it Miles Turner? I don't think he's necessarily a great fit. You can do worse than him, but that salary, you'd almost have to get something back for taking him. Chicago's in a rebuild. Who knows exactly what their center position is going to look like? Is it Nick Claxton? I'm not as high on Nick Claxton as I used to be. But maybe, I mean, if the price isn't too high, he could be a fit. He could be a fit. Zubac isn't going anywhere with the Pacers. Our old friend Anthony Davis, he makes too much, though. Isaiah Hartenstein, if they decline that team option. But again, that seems like a big if. I have a feeling the Spurs are keeping their center. Just a thought. Same thing for the Nuggets. The Rockets, Alperen Sengun, you just torched him in the playoffs. That would be like signing Russell Westbrook after you torched him in the play. Oh, wait. They did that. They did that, didn't they? Or traded for him, I should say. The Wolves, Gobert, that leads us right back there. Klingon, not going anywhere. I'd have interest in Rob Williams, but again, is he a starter? The funniest thing ever, Mark Williams, the Suns just made him a restricted free agent, but I don't think they're that keen on keeping him if he came with a strong offer. The Clippers, could you somehow get Niederhauser away from them or something? Probably not. They've got Brook Lopez, but I think they probably decline his team option, but Brolo's not. That's not going to work. Gold State, Porzingis, it sounds like he's already going to sign with them. I would imagine they hang on to Post. Yves Missi, is he a start? He didn't start for most of the year for New Orleans, but I'd have interest in Yves Missi. Then we go back to Daniel Gafford. Is Dallas allowed to trade with the Lakers, or is that prohibited? Are they allowed to, or would Mavs fans burn down the building at that point? The Grizz, they're not moving on from Edey, and we don't know his health anyway. Sacramento, no, that's an awful fit with Sabonis. And then it's the Utah Jazz and Walker Kessler. So we just went through every team there, and you're right. There's not a lot of obvious options out there, are there? Reportedly, he wanted players like Duren, like Walker Kessler, guys who are athletic, lob finishers. Would he settle? Would Luka settle for Miles Turner? Would that be the best option? I think Miles Turner is better than DeAndre Ayton. I think Miles Turner was a much better fit when the Lakers had Anthony Davis. Ironically, Anthony Davis would be a great fit if he's healthy and if he made a number that made sense, but he doesn't. And he isn't. So it's tricky trying to figure out who that center would be. But pretty clearly, that is the priority. Kelly Oubre? Yeah. I love Kelly Oubre's skill set. Hate the motor. But out of all the bigs we just went through, really quickly, you just went through, how many of them can shoot the three, protect the rim, and be a lob threat with a crazy catch radius? There's not many. There's not many. There are not many guys with that skill set. So I would gamble on the skill set. I would gamble on that kind of scarcity. If I get Kelly Oubre, I'd try it. A-list on the Kings isn't Sabonis. It's Renault. Okay, Maxime Renault. I should have mentioned him. Goga Bitadze is not. He's a backup. Gafford is A-list and he's a starter. You could look, I think you could argue he's a starter if you want to take that stance. I'm not going to fight you on that. A-list though? Luka makes him A-list? Is that where we're going? I'm not against Daniel Gafford. I like Daniel Gafford. I just, if the bar is, if we're talking A-list, I don't think he clears that bar. I have no problem with Daniel Gafford. I question whether or not he's actually a starter. On a Luka team, is he more capable of being a starter? Yeah, on a Luka team, he's more capable of being a starter than on a non-Luka team. I'll give you that. I don't think he clears the bar of A-list, though. Chances of a Giannis trade happening on draft night, it could. I think it's more likely to happen before the draft, but it certainly could. Lively's got such an injury history. I'd have interest in him too, though. For sure. Which rookie center could be a starter for the Lakers? Not saying they will be a starter, but has the best chance. Out of the gut, like Ade Mara, assuming he's not there, right? Assuming the guys who are expected to be off the board, you mean? I would say Terrence Reed. That would be the guy because he's much more experienced in college than Quaintance. Quaintance has the higher ceiling, no question. Athletically, he's a different level. But Terrence Reed has the best shot of the guys that we talked about that could legitimately be there. Already has a connection to the Lakers. It doesn't mean he's look, DaRon Holmes has the same agent, and he didn't like last till the Lakers pick in that draft. It was a couple years ago. Or no, he fell past the Lakers. The Lakers didn't take him there. So that doesn't mean necessarily anything. But Terrence Reed would be the guy that legitimately could be picked around the Lakers pick that I think would be immediate. You could start him. And that's best case scenario. Like he may still need to get up to speed and all of that. I'm just saying if you were purely looking through the lens of we need a guy who could start right now, who would I take? Would I take Zuby? Would I take Vesar? Would I, who would I take? I would take Terrence Reed if I needed a starter immediately. Morez Johnson. But is he most of the mocks I've seen have him going way before the Lakers, and I think some of the buzz is suggesting that he may even go like at 12 to OKC. Most of the buzz I've seen has him coming off the board earlier than the Lakers pick. I think the safer bet is 3% goes down as a Laker. Oh, the 3-point percentage goes down 3%. That does happen. Did you hear the 3-team deal that sends AD to LA? I mean, that was a hypothetical, and we talked about it. I think Ron Gutterman and I did last night on Lakers Nation, and I think it was the Nets side of that. If I remember correctly, I don't even recall exactly who the 3 teams were. Obviously, it was Washington, it was the Lakers. I want to say it was the Nets. Like, there was no reason for the Nets to do the deal, if I'm remembering correctly. Would I trade for AD for one healthy season? Sure, if you told me AD was going to be healthy for that season, but it's not so much just whether or not he's healthy. It's trying to trade for his contract. Like, yes, the Lakers have cap space to burn, maybe. But he's at $58 million. Like, that would be all of your cap space and then some. Like, even if you sent back Vando, even if you sent back Connect, you sent back some offsetting salary, all your cap space is gone. And then are you bringing back LeBron in that scenario? Or is it LeBron walks away? You say goodbye to Rui, goodbye Luke Kennard, unless you want to use the room exception. Marcus Smart, I've been slotting into the room exception. Maybe you bring him back. And then what? Then it's Luka, Austin. I don't know who your wing is in that case. Marcus Smart, AD. You didn't have room to bring back Rui. LeBron's gone. Unless LeBron says, screw it, to play with AD, I'll put the band back together and I'll play for whatever you have left over. Or if you can jettison some more salary in a deal. Otherwise, Jake LaRavia is your starter right at that point. So that's the challenge with AD. If AD was making 48 even, 38, like, it becomes much more feasible. But at 58, it's tough to make it work. There's always things you can do to try to tweak things, to try to massage the situation, try to overcome a hurdle. But that's a lot of money. And he wants a contract extension. Would you do DK in the 25th for Day'Ron and the 2 seconds the Nets own from LA? It's a good question. Let me look and see exactly where those seconds are at. Oh, one of them's 33. That's right. And the other one's 43. 33-43, Day'Ron Sharpe for 25 and Dalton Knecht. If you told me the draft was going to fall this way and Tarris Reed is going to be there at 33, if I've got that kind of intel, and if it's not Tarris Reed, it's somebody else, it's Zuby, it's whoever, somebody that I really like is going to be there, I would do it. I do think there is a drop-off in talent right around where that Lakers pick is. I could see the Nets trying to do that. So from the Lakers, I would need to have the intel that somebody's fallen to my spot. Know what I mean? That's what I'd be looking for. But Day'Ron Sharpe, I like him a lot. I don't think he's a starter, but he's a very good, very physical backup big who it's very hard finding guys that are elite at something, and Day'Ron is an elite rebounder. So I would have a lot of interest in that. I'd have a lot of interest in that. All right. AD pick and roll with Reeves, Luka, LeBron. Yeah. But again, is he going to be healthy? All of that. What's going on with D'Lo? Is he going to play for the Wizards next season, or is he technically a free agent? Let me ask you this. If you're D'Angelo Russell right now, do you think there's a team out there that's going to give you more than $6 million? I don't think it matters whether he's a Washington Wizard or whatever. Is there a team, because he has a contract that says next season, if he wants it, he will get $6 million. He shot 29.5% from three last season. He shot 31% from three the season before. What the hell happened? I don't know. D'Lo suddenly lost his powers. He was good that last season for the Lakers. 42% from three. He's been awful ever since. I don't think anybody in the NBA has given him more than $6 million. I don't think anybody in the NBA has given him more than a minimum, to be honest. So, if I'm D'Angelo Russell, I am picking up that player option for sure. I'm saying I will take $6 million. And then you see what's what. The Wizards might say, just stay home and we'll try to find a trade for you as an expiring contract. If I'm D'Lo, I'm doing what I can to try to, if it's not with the Wizards, try to make it onto a team. If the Wizards are going to cut him, they cut him, and then he can go sign somewhere else. But I'm picking up that player option for sure. Because wherever he winds up, it may not be with the Wizards. Maybe they waive him. Maybe they use him as a expiring contract in a trade, whatever. The bottom line is, I don't think anybody's giving him anywhere close to $6 million. So I'm just taking the $6 million. If you had to bring back two out of our three free agents between Rui, Kennard, and Smart, who would you pick? If the cost is all the same, Smart and Rui. Smart and Rui, and it's not particularly close. I like Kennard. Offensively, his ability to pass off the dribble, which Rui is not great at. His ability to pass off the dribble is a big plus. Great shooter, obviously, but Rui physically can do so much more. So if the numbers were all the same, Rui and Smart. I think where it gets interesting is if Rui has an offer for like 25 mil somewhere and Kennard's at 10. Right? That's where that changes. That's where that changes. But otherwise, if the money's all the same, Rui and Smart. And I would rank it in this order. I would go, ooh, would I go Rui or Smart? I think I would actually slot Smart first and then Rui and then Kennard. But you could go the other way and have Rui 1. I personally would go Smart though, even though he's older. He's just a better fit there. How does the members priority comment work? I don't know. What is that? I have no idea. I've never heard of that before. I don't have memberships turned on this channel. So I don't know what that is. I have no idea. Dave McMenamin on ESPN Detroit said, tell Luka leave Jalen Duren around. Oh, okay. That's where it was. That's where it was. That's interesting. I mean, he's going to be an RFA. It's really tough to get those guys. The one thing about the NBA, though, is it's unpredictable. And that's what we love about it. That's where you get the surprise. Oh, my God, that team did what? Right? Like those moments. I mean, the greatest ever was the Lakers trading for Luka. Right? Like even if you're not a Lakers fan, anybody but Mavs fans were losing their minds when that happened. They couldn't believe that just shocking stuff like that happens in this league. And I've tried to drive this home quite a bit that last year when a team like I know we've skewed the Lakers heavy here, but Marcus Smart, DeAndre Ayton were not free agents at this time last year. And that doesn't necessarily mean more guys are going to get bought out and hit the market or whatever. It could happen, but the point is more that even when we think, okay, these are going to be the options, this is the path they should go, something happens and you think, oh, we didn't even know that was a possibility. And then that takes you in a whole different direction. And that's part of what I love about the NBA, and I love covering this league, is all the possibilities, all the different things that can go down, and how often this league still surprises you. And some people get frustrated with that. I see it in the comments all the time about nothing happened yet. Why are you guys talking about rumors and all that kind of look? If you don't like that stuff, don't watch. But I love it. I love this stuff. I love all the different permutations, the different ways that you can twist things and tweak things and put a team together. I love all that. I love all that stuff. The rumors don't bother me one bit because I know a lot of them don't wind up coming to fruition, but it's fun to consider some of the different options and stuff that are out there. That's the way I look at it, though. Why don't people understand we can't hunt for stars? The only way to have multiple is to have cost control players and contracts, which we don't have. And that's an argument for drafting somebody at 25 if you're the Lakers, or keeping a pick if you're any team, is that you get them on a cost controlled rookie contract, which is a very, very valuable thing. I think the draft has become an overpowered leg of the team building table. I said I wasn't going to be here super long, and now I just looked and it's been an hour and 20 minutes. Man. What was your favorite NBA finals that did not involve the Lakers? Rockets and Knicks, that's a good one. Cavs and Warriors, they had their battles. That was interesting. Bucks and Suns. Oh, I know. Dallas and Miami. When Dallas beat, that was right after the Heat Big Three came together. Dallas on Miami. That was fun just because it felt like everybody was wrapped up. Everybody except for Miami Heat fans was wrapped up in wanting to see the Heat's big three fail. And obviously LeBron's a Laker now and all of that. That's changed the perception, but it felt like that the Heat's big three were seen as like the villains of the NBA, right? They committed the sin. They broke the unwritten rule. They teamed up together. They colluded to join forces. It was a non-competitive move, right? That was some of the conversation that was going on at the time anyway. And then you had this Dallas Mavericks team with Dirk, who was supposed to be soft and could never get over the hump. And then he just had a performance for the ages in that finals. And everybody on that Mavs team played so well in that series. That wound up being just because of the drama around it. And then seeing a guy like Dirk, a legend, finally kind of slay his demons and rise to that next level. And just because it felt like there was so much interest in seeing the Heat lose, like that heightened everything. So that was probably my favorite non-Lakers finals. Okay, everybody. Appreciate all of you being here. You guys are awesome. If you haven't done so yet, if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do. I am going to go try to get a little workout in and then go to sleep because I know we're at that point of the year where I got to start waking up earlier and earlier because news is going to start coming out earlier in the day. So appreciate all of you. Thank you again. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Until next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.